poor rancher saved two Apache sisters. The chief's shocking decision. Emotional Western story. The sun hung low over Red Mesa, casting long shadows across the dusty plains. The wind blew in sharp gusts, carrying fine red sand that shimmered in the twin suns' light. Ethan Cross wiped his brow with a worn cloth, squinting at the herd of hover cattle grazing near the edge of the canyon. Life on Red Mesa was hard. Most settlers barely scraped by, and Ethan was no exception. He ran a small ranch with barely enough equipment to keep his animals alive, let alone make a profit. Ethan had learned long ago that survival meant working hard and keeping a low profile. Most days his life was routine. Check the cattle, repair broken hover fences, and trade what he could in the small mining town nearby. He had little in the way of wealth, but he had pride in his work and a strong sense of fairness. People often called him stubborn, but he thought of it as simple honesty. On this day, however, the quiet of Red Mesa was broken. As Ethan guided his last herd back toward the barn, he noticed movement near the cliffs. At first he thought it was just a sandstorm shifting the shadows, but then he saw two figures, crouching and huddled together. Something about their posture told him they were not ordinary travelers. They were hiding. Curiosity and caution battled in Ethan's mind. Most strangers in these parts brought trouble. Bandits, bounty hunters, or desperate settlers were not kind to ranchers who tried to help, but as he rode closer, he saw their faces clearly for the first time. Two young women, no older than 16 or 17, with dark hair and eyes that held both fear and strength. Their clothes were torn, and their skin was covered in dust and scratches. Ethan's heart tightened. "Hey," he called out, keeping his voice low but firm. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" The girls froze, their eyes wide. One of them whispered something in a language Ethan didn't understand. It was soft, melodic, and carried the weight of fear. The other girl shook her head and glanced at the approaching shadows behind them. Small, mechanical drones hovering just over the sand. Ethan felt a chill. These weren't ordinary wanderers. They were being hunted. He dismounted, leaving his hover horse tied to the fence, and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Come on, hurry, get in my barn," he urged. The girls hesitated, but the drone's humming grew louder, and survival instinct won. They ran, stumbling through the red sand toward Ethan's small rickety barn. Once inside, Ethan quickly closed the doors and latched them. The barn was cramped and smelled of hay and old metal, but it offered safety. The girls leaned against the wall, breathing hard, eyes darting to the small windows. Ethan knelt in front of them, keeping his voice calm. "You're safe here, for now," he said. "I don't know who's after you, but I'll keep you safe." The older girl, the one who had whispered, finally spoke in broken English. "We need help. They hunting us." Her voice trembled, but there was determination there. "Please, hide us." Ethan nodded. "But I need to know why they're after you. Can you tell me?" The girls exchanged nervous glances. The younger one shook her head, clinging to the older sister. Ethan understood. They were cautious, and with good reason. "Okay," he said softly. "You don't have to tell me everything. Just trust me for now." He rummaged through his supplies and found clean blankets and a few rations of dried food. He offered them to the girls. "Eat something! You need strength if anyone comes looking." As they ate, Ethan examined the small drones outside the barn. They hovered silently now, scanning the area with tiny blue lights. Whoever sent them was not going to give up easily. He realized the girls were in serious danger, far beyond anything he had encountered in his quiet life. Night fell quickly on Red Mesa. The twin moons rose, casting pale light over the canyon. Ethan built a small fire outside, careful to hide it with smoke filters so the drones wouldn't see. He sat near the barn, keeping watch. The girls remained inside, whispering in their language, occasionally peeking through cracks in the wooden walls. Ethan thought about his life and how it had been ordinary, almost dull, until this moment. Now, with these two strangers in his barn, everything changed. He felt a strange sense of purpose. He had always wanted to do more than survive, and now he had the chance. But he also knew that helping them would bring danger not only to himself but to his small ranch. The next morning, Ethan led the girls to a hidden well behind the barn to wash the dust from their faces. As the water flowed, he noticed the older girl staring at him with cautious trust. "I am Leela," she said. "This is my sister, Nayeli." Ethan nodded. "I'm Ethan Cross. I run this ranch. You're safe here for now, but we need a plan." "They won't stop looking for you." They want to capture our chief. He is our leader." She paused, trembling. They will destroy anyone who helps us. Ethan's heart sank. This was bigger than he imagined. These girls were not just fugitives. They were part of something much larger, a noble clan fighting for survival across the stars. And now, somehow, they had ended up in his care. For hours, they talked quietly. Ethan learned fragments of their story. They had fled their home when the corporate warlords attacked their clan. The chief had been captured, and they had narrowly escaped a deadly raid. Their journey through the desert had been long and treacherous, and Ethan realized how strong and brave these girls were. Suddenly, a distant humming reached their ears. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Through the canyon, he spotted the glint of the drones again. The bounty hunters were still tracking them, and they were closing in faster than before. Ethan acted quickly. "Stay here," he whispered. He ran to the barn and secured the back exit, creating a hidden escape path through the canyon rocks. He handed Lila a small laser flare. "If anyone comes, use this to distract them. Don't be afraid." The sun was setting again when the first drone appeared near the barn entrance. Ethan fired his old plasma revolver, a relic from the early frontier days, and it streaked a bright blue light across the canyon. The drone wobbled but didn't fall. Ethan cursed and prepared another shot. Lila and Nayeli huddled inside, wide-eyed, but they followed his instructions and threw the flare outside. The sudden light and smoke confused the drone, forcing it to retreat temporarily. Ethan knew this was only a temporary solution. The drones would return, faster and smarter. He had to think of a long-term plan. But for now, he had bought them a little time. That night, as the girls slept under the blankets he had laid out, Ethan sat outside, staring at the stars. Red Mesa was quiet again, but he could feel the tension in the air. This was just the beginning. He thought about the chief, the girls, and the warlords hunting them. Somehow he had become part of a story much larger than himself, a story of courage, survival, and hope in a harsh, lawless frontier. Ethan clenched his fists and made a silent promise. He would protect these girls no matter the cost. He had no wealth, no army, and no powerful allies. But he had determination, skill, and a stubborn sense of honor. That, he realized, might be enough to survive the dangers of Red Mesa. As the twin moons rose high, casting silver light over the desert, Ethan's gaze settled on the horizon. Somewhere out there, the bounty hunters were waiting, tracking the sisters. But he would not let them take Lila and Nayeli, not while he still drew breath. And with that thought, Ethan Cross, a poor rancher on a distant desert planet, knew his life had changed forever. The frontier had claimed him, and now it demanded that he rise to the challenge, or perish trying. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying with it the faint hum of the returning drones. The night was long, the desert vast, and the story of Ethan, Lila, and Nayeli was just beginning. The next morning on Red Mesa was quiet but tense. The twin suns rose slowly over the dusty horizon, painting the canyon in warm orange and red. Ethan Cross moved cautiously outside the barn, scanning the plains. The drones had not returned overnight, but he knew it was only a matter of time. Whoever was hunting the sisters would not give up. Not now, not ever. Inside the barn, Lila and Nayeli were awake and whispering in their language. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion, fear mixed with determination. He brought them water and rations, setting them down gently. "You need strength today," he said. "I don't know exactly what we'll do, but we'll survive." Lila looked up, her dark eyes steady despite the fear. "We must find the chief," she said softly. He is the only one who can stop the warlords." Ethan frowned. "Chief? Who is he, and who are these warlords hunting you?" Lila hesitated but finally spoke. "We are Apache, from the stars. Our clan once lived on a peaceful planet far beyond this system. But warlords, corporate rulers, attacked us. They took our homes, our people, and the chief. We escaped, but they follow us." Nayeli, the younger sister, clutched Lila's arm. "We cannot fight them alone. They have machines, weapons, ships. We are only two girls." Ethan nodded. He had suspected their story was bigger than just a few bounty hunters. "Then you need help, and you're going to get it. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure it out." The day passed slowly. Ethan worked with the girls to hide any tracks around the barn and camouflage their small hover horses. He taught them how to move silently across the rocks and cliffs, explaining how to avoid detection. The sisters were quick learners, nimble and alert. They had survived much worse, and their courage impressed Ethan. By afternoon, he realized that hiding forever was impossible. The drones would return, and more were likely on their way. They needed a plan. "We can't stay here," Ethan said, pointing to the open plains. "We need a place where they cannot reach us easily. Somewhere no one will think to look." Lila thought for a moment. There is an old station, abandoned, far beyond the cliffs. It belonged to the miners before the corporations took control. They will not go there. Ethan nodded. "Then that's where we go. But it's risky. The journey is long and the drones may spot us." By late afternoon, Ethan, Lila, and Nayeli set out. The desert wind cut sharply against their faces as they rode hover horses across the canyon. The twin suns cast long shadows, and every rustle of sand made Ethan's pulse quicken. The girls were quiet, focused, trusting him to lead. As they neared a narrow canyon pass, Ethan froze. Ahead, 3 drones hovered in a triangular formation, scanning the rocks below. He whispered to the girls, "Stay low and follow me exactly. Don't make a sound." They dropped behind boulders and waited. The drones passed slowly, their blue sensors sweeping the canyon. Ethan counted his breaths, timing each movement carefully. When the drones moved past, he signaled the sisters, and they slipped silently through the pass.
Hours later, they reached the old mining station.
The structure was half buried in red sand, metal walls scarred and rusted. It was quiet, abandoned, and perfect for hiding. Ethan opened the heavy door, and the girls followed him inside. "This'll be our base for now," Ethan said. "We can rest, plan, and watch the skies." Inside, the station was empty except for old equipment and dusty crates. Ethan lit a small lamp, and the warm glow revealed the sisters' faces. Lila looked at him with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "We would not have survived without you." Ethan shrugged. "I'm not a hero. I just don't like seeing innocent people in danger. That's all." But deep down, he felt the weight of responsibility. These girls were in his care, and their lives depended on him. He could not fail. As night fell, they heard a distant hum.
Ethan's eyes narrowed. Drones.
More than before. He peered through a cracked window and saw a small fleet of hover drones moving in the distance, scanning the canyon. The warlords were relentless. Ethan realized they had no choice but to fight smart, not strong. He needed to understand who these warlords were and what they wanted. He searched the old station and found a long-range communication device, still partially functional. With Lila's help, he activated it, sending a coded signal into space. Hours later, a faint response came. It was a hologram, flickering but clear enough to see. A figure appeared, a tall man in ceremonial armor, with dark skin and piercing eyes. "Ethan Cross," he said. "I am the chief of the Apache Star Clan. You have found the sisters and protected them. You have courage. But this is only the beginning. The warlords will come for you, for them, for all of us. You must be ready." The chief's presence, even through a flickering hologram, filled him with awe. He realized the stakes were far higher than he imagined. This was not just a desert chase. This was war across the stars, and he was caught in the middle. Lila and Nayeli knelt beside the hologram. Tears filled their eyes. "Chief," Lila whispered, we made it this far." The chief's eyes were stern but gentle. "You are brave, my daughters. But courage alone will not save you. Ethan Cross must join you. He must learn our ways and help us fight. Trust him, and he will prove himself." Ethan felt a mix of pride and fear. He had never been part of a larger battle. He was a rancher, not a soldier. Yet he could not ignore the responsibility. These girls depended on him, and now so did the chief and his clan. The next morning, Ethan led the sisters in training. They practiced moving silently across the rocky terrain, setting traps and preparing for attacks. He showed them how to use small plasma pistols and old mining lasers. The sisters adapted quickly, their fear fueling determination. As they trained, Ethan noticed changes in the skies. The twin suns reflected off distant metal structures, and the drones seemed to be scouting wider areas. The warlords were methodical, organized, and ruthless. They would not give up until they had captured the sisters and destroyed anyone in their way. Days passed in tense preparation. Lila and Nayeli shared stories of their home, of the Apache Star Clan, and of the chief's wisdom. Ethan listened carefully, learning their culture and understanding why their survival mattered so much. Each story deepened his resolve. He was no longer just protecting 2 girls. He was protecting a future, a clan, and a legacy. One night, a scout drone slipped past their defenses and landed near the station. Ethan caught it quickly, using a plasma net he had fashioned from old wires and energy cells. Inside, he found a data chip. It contained maps, schedules, and communications, evidence of the warlord's plans. Ethan realized they were dealing with an enemy far more dangerous than he had imagined. He called Lila and Naeli to examine the chip. "This is serious," he said. "These people have ships, weapons, and spies everywhere. We need to be ready for anything." Lila nodded, her face grim. "We must reach the chief soon. We cannot fight them alone." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we'll find him, and we'll make sure no one hurts you until we do, I promise." As dawn broke over Red Mesa, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Ethan, Lila, and Naeli prepared to leave the station. Their journey ahead would be dangerous, filled with unknown threats, but they were ready to face it together. The frontier was lawless, the stars were wild, and the warlords were relentless, but they had courage, skill, and trust. And in a universe where survival meant everything, that was enough for now. The horizon glowed with the light of distant planets, and Ethan felt a strange thrill. The adventure had only just begun. Red Mesa had tested him, shaped him, and now the stars would challenge the desert night on Red Mesa was quiet, but the tension in the air was thick enough to choke. Ethan cross-crouched behind a boulder, his plasma pistol humming softly in his hand. Lila and Naeli hid beside him, their faces pale but determined. The abandoned mining station had become their temporary fortress. But Ethan knew that safety was temporary. The warlord's drones had found their location again, and this time they were not alone. Far above the canyon, the glow of a warship's engines reflected off the rocks. It hovered silently, massive and dark, like a predator watching its prey. Ethan's heart pounded. "They've brought the big guns," he whispered. "This is it, girls. We either fight smart or we don't survive." Lila clenched her fists. "We fight. Together." Naeli nodded, her younger face steeled with courage. Ethan admired their bravery. They were young, yet they carried the weight of their clan on their shoulders. The first drones landed near the edge of the canyon, scanning for movement. Ethan signaled to the girls. "On my mark, distract the drones with light flares, then follow me through the tunnels. We'll set a trap." The plan was risky. The tunnels were narrow and unstable, remnants of the old mining operations. But Ethan knew every corner of this place. He had memorized the passages, the hidden pits, the weak walls. It would be their advantage if used carefully. Lila and Naeli ignited the flares, sending sparks and smoke into the canyon. The drones swerved and shot bursts of scanning light, trying to pinpoint the source. Ethan led the sisters through the narrow tunnels, sliding silently over sand and metal debris. The drones followed, but the flare smoke confused their sensors. Suddenly, a drone emerged inside the tunnel, its blue sensors locking on them. Ethan fired his plasma pistol, and the beam hit the drone's power core. It sparked violently and crashed to the ground, smoke pouring from its circuits. Lila and Naeli gasped, but Ethan whispered, "Stay focused. This isn't over." The tunnels twisted deeper into the canyon, leading them to an old cavern used by miners decades ago. Ethan set traps quickly. Rocks balanced precariously, makeshift energy nets from old wiring, and pressure plates that would trigger alarms to mislead the drones. The sisters helped, moving silently, their small hands steady as they set the devices. Hours passed as they'd prepared. Ethan's mind raced, anticipating every possible move from the warlords. He knew this would not just be a fight. It would be a test of wits, courage, and endurance. At last, the drones moved into the cavern, scanning for movement. Ethan signaled the sisters to hide behind a large boulder. As the drones approached, rocks tumbled down the tunnels, triggering the first traps. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and confusion spread among the machines. Ethan fired precise shots, disabling 2 more drones before they could regroup, but the battle was far from over. A loud hum echoed through the cavern. Above the tunnels, the warship had deployed robotic enforcers, tall, armored machines with plasma rifles and cutting lasers. They landed in the cavern entrance, their metal feet crunching over sand and rock. Ethan felt a surge of fear, but he swallowed it. "We hold our ground," he muttered. "No one touches these girls." The first enforcer moved forward, swinging its plasma rifle. Ethan rolled to the side, firing his pistol with deadly precision. Sparks flew as the beam struck the robot's chest panel. Lila and Naeli peeked out, helping by throwing small energy grenades Ethan had salvaged from the mining station. The blast disoriented the enforcers, giving Ethan room to maneuver. One enforcer grabbed a fallen boulder and hurled it toward the sisters. Nearly dodged just in time, and Lila tripped a pressure plate that sent a net of wires snapping onto the robot. It struggled, sparks flying, as Ethan ran forward and fired directly at its power core. It exploded in a burst of blue light. Breathing heavily, Ethan realized the enforcers were relentless. More drones and machines would arrive soon. They could not stay in the cavern much longer. "We move now," he shouted. "Follow me through the secret passage." The hidden exit led to a steep canyon cliff. Ethan climbed first, helping the sisters up. Behind them, the sounds of robotic pursuit echoed through the tunnels. Dust and sand kicked up as drones hovered closer, scanning for movement. Once they reached the cliff top, Ethan paused. He looked at Lila and Nayeli, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, yet their eyes shone with determination. "We've survived this far, but the real fight is coming," he said. They moved quickly across the rocky terrain toward the canyon rim, where a small hovercraft hidden under rocks awaited. Ethan had repaired it earlier, and now it would carry them to safety, or at least further from the warlord's immediate reach. As they climbed into the hovercraft, a new sound cut through the air. A deep, commanding voice. A hologram flickered above the canyon, shimmering with a blue light. It was the chief of the Apache Star Clan. "Ethan Cross," the chief said. "You have proven your courage, but this is the true test. The warlords know your location and will strike soon. You must act quickly. Protect the sisters and reach the coordinates I have sent. There the next part of your journey begins." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility. "We won't fail," he said firmly. Lila and Nayeli held on to him, trusting him completely. The chief's hologram faded, leaving only the sound of the wind across the desert cliffs. The hovercraft lifted off, gliding over the canyon at high speed. Below, the first drones caught sight of them and fired beams of light. Ethan maneuvered sharply, diving behind rock formations and returning fire with the craft's mounted plasma turrets. Lila and Nayeli operated the secondary weapons, firing at incoming drones with precision. Hours of pursuit followed, the desert canyon turning into a battlefield of sparks, laser fire, and smoke. Ethan realized that the warlords had expected resistance, but they had not anticipated the teamwork, courage, and ingenuity of a small rancher and two brave sisters. Finally, the hovercraft reached the coordinates the chief had provided, a hidden plateau, barely visible from the main canyon paths. The area was protected by natural rock formations and thick sand dunes, perfect for hiding. Ethan landed carefully, keeping the craft silent. They disembarked and took cover behind the rocks, surveying the area. The sisters were exhausted but alert, their eyes scanning the horizon. Ethan checked his plasma pistol. He was low on energy cells, but he had enough for a final confrontation if necessary. Suddenly, movement caught Ethan's eye. Figures emerged from the sand dunes. Humans, not robots. The warlords had sent soldiers this time. Elite fighters trained in desert and space combat. Ethan's heart sank. They were outnumbered. Lila whispered, "We can't fight them all." Nayeli nodded, clutching her sister's hand. Ethan took a deep breath. "We won't fight them all. We'll fight smart." He led the sisters through narrow passages and rocky overhangs, setting traps along the way. Rocks balanced precariously, energy nets hidden under sand, and makeshift tripwires ready to trigger explosions. The warlord soldiers fell into the traps one by one, disoriented and injured but relentless. The final confrontation came at the edge of the plateau. Ethan, Lila, and Nayeli faced the remaining soldiers. Plasma beams lit up the night as they dodged, fired, and used every trick Ethan had taught. Rocks tumbled, traps triggered, and the sisters fought bravely alongside him. In the midst of the chaos, Ethan saw a figure approaching. The chief, alive, arriving through a hidden transport. His presence inspired the sisters, giving them courage to fight harder. Together, they overpowered the last of the soldiers, forcing them to retreat under heavy fire. When the dust settled, the plateau was silent, except for the wind and distant echoes of battle. Ethan, Lila, and Nayeli stood together, bruised and exhausted, but victorious. They had survived against impossible odds. The chief approached, his gaze stern but approving. "You have done well, Ethan Cross," he said. "You have proven your courage, your skill, and your honor. But remember, this is only the beginning. The warlords will not stop. You must continue and you must grow stronger. The sisters' journey is far from over, and you are now part of it." Ethan looked at the sisters. Their faces reflected relief, gratitude, and renewed determination. "We will keep going," he said. "Together." The chief nodded. "Good. Rest now, for the path ahead is long and dangerous. The stars themselves will test you." As they settled among the rocks, Ethan realized that Red Mesa had changed him. He was no longer just a poor rancher. He was a protector, a strategist, and a friend to the sisters. The frontier had demanded courage, and he had answered. Above, the twin moons of Red Mesa glimmered softly, casting silver light over the desert. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, promising challenges, adventures, and dangers yet unseen. Ethan, Leela, and Nayeli had survived the last gunfight, but they all knew the true war was just beginning. And with courage, wit, and determination, they would face whatever the lawless stars had in store. Dawn broke slowly over the hidden plateau beyond Red Mesa. Pale, golden light touched the rocks, turning the desert calm and quiet after the long night of danger. Ethan Cross stood near the edge of the cliff, looking out at the endless land. The wind moved softly now, no longer filled with threat. For the first time in many days, there was silence. Behind him, Lila and Nayeli sat near a small fire, resting. Their faces showed exhaustion, but also relief. They were alive. They were free, for now. The chief of the Apache Star Clan stood nearby, watching Ethan carefully. He was tall and calm, with eyes that seemed to carry centuries of wisdom. His warriors were hidden among the rocks, silent and alert, protecting the plateau. "You fought with honor," the chief said at last. "Few outsiders would risk everything for my people." Ethan turned slowly. "I didn't do it for honor," he replied honestly. "I did it because it was right." The chief studied him, then nodded. "That answer tells me more than any battle ever could." The sisters stood and joined them. Lila bowed her head. "Chief, Ethan saved us when no one else would. He gave us food, shelter, and hope." Nayeli added quietly, "He treated us like family." The chief looked at Ethan again, deeper this time. "Then come. There is something you must see." He led them across the plateau to a large stone platform, hidden under camouflage cloth. With a simple hand signal, the cloth was removed, revealing an ancient starship, old but powerful. Its surface was marked with Apache symbols and glowing patterns. "This ship carries our history," the chief said. "It also carries our future." Ethan felt a strange pull toward it. "Why show me this?" "Because the warlords are not finished," the chief replied. "They believe strength comes from control and fear." But today they will learn another truth. As if summoned by his words, the sky darkened. A distant rumble echoed through the air. Ethan looked up sharply. Multiple ships appeared on the horizon, sleek, modern, and heavily armed. "They followed us," Nayeli whispered. "Yes," the chief said calmly. "And now we end this." Alarms sounded across the plateau. Apache warriors moved swiftly into position. Ethan's heart raced, but his mind stayed clear. He checked his plasma pistol, then looked at the sisters. "Stay close to me." Lila nodded. "We fight together." The warlord's main ship descended, hovering above the rocks. A loud mechanical voice echoed across the land. "Surrender the sisters and the chief. This is your final warning." No one moved. Then the chief stepped forward. "I am here," he called out, "and I do not surrender." The battle began. Drones poured from the ship like metal insects, firing beams of light across the plateau. Apache defenses activated instantly. Energy shields rose from the ground, blocking incoming fire. Warriors returned shots with precision and discipline. Ethan ran with Lila and Nayeli toward higher ground. He used the rocks for cover, firing only when necessary. He was no soldier, but he had learned. Every move was careful, every shot mattered. One drone locked onto the sisters. Ethan stepped in front of them without thinking. He fired, hitting the drone's core. It fell from the sky, crashing into the sand. "You okay?" he asked. Lila smiled despite the danger. "Because of you." The warlord's leader finally appeared, descending in an armored suit. His voice was calm, but cold. "Chief," he said, "your people are finished. Step aside and I may spare them." The chief walked forward alone, unarmed. The battlefield seemed to pause. "You misunderstand," the chief said evenly. "This was never about survival alone. This was about choice." He raised his hand. Suddenly, the ancient starship behind the plateau came alive. Lights flared across its surface. A deep hum filled the air as its systems awakened. The warlord turned in shock. "That ship was supposed to be dead." "It was resting," the chief replied. "Waiting." The The ship rose slowly into the sky, dwarfing the enemy vessels. Its presence was overwhelming, not because of weapons, but because of meaning. This ship represented unity, history, and purpose. The warlords opened fire, but the ancient ship's shields held strong. With precise movements, it disabled enemy systems without destroying them. One by one, the warlords' ships lost power and fell back, retreating in chaos. The battlefield fell silent again. Dust settled. The sun rose higher. It was over. Ethan lowered his weapon, breathing deeply. Lila and Nayeli stood beside him, eyes wide with disbelief. They had won. The chief turned to Ethan and walked toward him. The warriors watched closely. "You could have fled," the chief said. "You could have saved yourself." Ethan shook his head. "I wouldn't have been able to live with that." The chief placed a hand over his chest, a sign of deep respect. "Then hear my decision." Everyone grew still. "Ethan Cross," the chief announced, "a poor rancher of Red Mesa. You stood against fear, greed, and power, not for reward, but for what is right." He paused. "From this day forward, you are no longer an outsider." Gasps spread among the warriors. "I offer you protection under the Apache Star Clan," the chief continued. "A place among us. And more than that, I ask you to become a guardian of the frontier." Leela's eyes filled with tears. Nieli smiled openly. Ethan was stunned. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Nayeli whispered, laughing softly. Ethan looked around. The desert, the stars, the people he had risked everything for. Then he nodded. "Yes, I will." The chief smiled just slightly. Days passed. The Apache clan prepared to move, spreading their people to safe systems beyond the warlord's reach. The ancient starship became a symbol once more, not of war, but of hope. Ethan stood at the edge of the plateau one last time. His old ranch on Red Mesa was far away now, but he felt no regret. He had gained something greater than land or wealth. Lila joined him. "You could have stayed a rancher." "I was always more than that," Ethan said quietly. "I just didn't know it yet." Nayeli ran toward them. "The stars are waiting." As the ships lifted into space, the desert below looked small, almost peaceful. Red Mesa faded into memory, but its lesson remained. Courage does not come from power. It comes from choice. And somewhere among the stars, the story of a poor rancher who saved two sisters would be told again and again, not as a myth, but as truth, a legend of the frontier, a legend of the void.